All right, guys. So the American Rescue Plan, aka Joe Biden's stimulus package, has passed the Senate after a 24-hour vote-a-rama session in which the politicians deliberate on amendments that they want to throw in the Senate version of the bill, and then they basically vote on it, right? Now, the $15 an hour minimum wage was proposed by Bernie Sanders in this vote-a-rama session, and ultimately that failed. I already have an earlier video on kind of the political fallout from that, right? So there will be no $15 an hour minimum wage after the House had passed their version of the bill with the $15 an hour minimum wage in it. Now, again, if you guys didn't know what you should know, the Senate parliamentarian had ruled that the $15 an hour minimum wage was not allowed to be a part of the budget reconciliation process, right? And basically, Bernie Sanders and the progressives tried to get around that when Kamala Harris refused to overturn the Senate parliamentarian in regards to the $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, a lot of progressives are upset about that because they're saying that the Democrats aren't using their powers to pass policy and to fulfill campaign promises. Okay, and this video is probably gonna talk a lot about how the progressives are upset because honestly, the future of whether or not this bill is going to move forward, and if they're going to allow themselves to continue to be bullied by the establishment Democrats, is going to come down to them in the House, because the Senate version of the bill is different than what was passed in the House, which means that the Senate's version of the bill needs to be passed in the House again in order for it to be sent to Joe Biden's desk for it to be signed into law. Now, with that being said, right, it's funny because Nancy Pelosi putting that $15 an hour minimum wage boost in the House bill in the first place kind of shows that she was wasting time, right? She was wasting our time. She was wasting American people's time because she knew it was going to be taken out and they would have to vote on it again, right? Kind of shows how politics goes. But let's back up here and go over the main provisions in the bill and how we got to this point and what's in the Senate bill versus what was in the House bill. So the first thing that's in the Senate bill is that most Americans are going to receive $1,400 stimulus checks if you earn up to $75,000 a year. Now, this is for single filers. Now, the big difference between the Senate bill and House bill is that the Senate bill has been more targeted. So in deliberations with Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and some of these more conservative Democrats, basically the conservative Democrats basically said, listen, we want some compromise in regards to just sending out the checks to everybody and the unemployment and minimum wage. Obviously, the more conservative Democrats didn't want the minimum wage, and that's part of the reason why I got stripped out. And apparently, they wanted to implement more phase-outs for the stimulus checks. That's one part of it, right? So, in the House version of the bill, the phase-out for the stimulus checks, I think, would begin after $75,000, but it would completely phase out at $100,000. So that means if you made between $75,000 and $100,000 during the 2019 tax year or 2020 tax year, then you would still receive some check, right? It might not be the full amount, but you'll receive some of it. So under the Senate plan, you are now completely phased out at $80,000. So that means that if you make more than $80,000, you get nothing, okay, as a single filer. So that's a change. The phase out is a lot more steep under this new Senate bill. The second part was extension of a $300 weekly federal boost to unemployment benefits through August. Now, the House bill had this at $400. So I think it was $400 extended through September, I want to say, or something like that. But in the Senate bill, they have put that at $300 instead. And then I think they also made the first $10,000 or so of that federal unemployment tax-free. Now, the rest of the bill basically remains the same. It sends $350 billion to state and local governments whose revenue has declined because of COVID-19's impact on the economy. The Republicans obviously don't really like this. This is probably the most hated part of the bill from the Republicans because, one, they feel that a lot of these state and local governments have been mismanaged, particularly the ones that have decided just to shut down everything, right, and to lay off all their workers. And they also feel that the formula that's being applied for relief for these state and local governments is biased against conservative states. So states like Florida, Texas, South Dakota, that, didn't necessarily shut down all the way, right? That tried to keep their economies open, that tried to find a fine balance. They get less relief because, they want to be responsible, right? But states like California, New York, right, that have basically gone bankrupt due to not collecting any tax money, having everything shut down, and having to lay off so many workers, they're going to get more aid, right, under this bill. So this bill is going to primarily benefit blue states in regards to state and local government relief. And that is a big criticism of this bill that's coming from the Republicans. Now, we also have $130 billion to help fully reopen schools and colleges. Again, another big criticism from the Republicans here, because basically the teachers unions have forced schools to stay locked down throughout the country, and it seems that the Biden administration is rewarding schools that want to stay shut down, right? We are spending all this money on schools, and they're not even open, right? Plus all the other money we spent on schools that has not been spent yet. So we're steadily pouring money into reopening schools that don't really want to reopen, right? Allows $30 billion to help renters and landlords weather economic losses. Devotes $50 billion for small business assistance. Dedicates $16 billion for vaccine development, distribution, and related needs. Now, the Republicans are in agreement with this. The reason why the Republicans are in agreement with the vaccine development, distribution, and related needs is because this actually goes towards fighting COVID, right? Which is supposed to be the whole point of this bill. It's called the COVID relief package for a reason, right? It's supposed to go towards COVID. And, Kevin McCarthy put his infamous graph up that basically shows like what 9% of this bill, 9% of the $1.9 trillion is actually going directly towards COVID relief, right? So again, another Republican criticism there, but they are on board with the vaccine development, distribution, and direct COVID relief, because this incentivizes states to open up, which means that the government ultimately has to spend less money. And then we have expansion of the child tax credit up to $3,600 per child. So those are basically the main provisions that's going to be in this Senate package. Now, this has to go to the House to be passed again. And obviously the House is going to pass it. But I will say this. Progressives want to be very, very upset with the establishment, right? In terms of them not using their power to do what progressives want. The progressives, if they was really serious about what they want, they would vote no on this in the House. They would say no. You guys stripped out the $15 an hour minimum wage. You also increased the phase out for the stimulus checks. You lower unemployment. We don't want to vote on. We don't accept this bill. If the progressives actually had cojones, they could block this bill in the House and get back to the negotiating table. But the progressives, right, and thankfully for us, conservatives, don't have the cojones to actually challenge the establishment. They do a whole lot of talking, but they don't have the cojones to really challenge the establishment when it gets down to the nitty gritty. And it's down to the nitty gritty. AOC, Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, they all talk a big game on Twitter. But they have the opportunity, if they really want to fight for the $15 an hour minimum wage, to basically reject this bill in the House. Right? That's what they could do. But see, they don't want to do that because they don't want to be seen as denying aid to the American citizens. They don't have a backbone. The Republicans, on the other hand, they see all the waste in the bill, and the Democrats basically didn't want to negotiate at all with the Republicans on the provisions in the bill. And the Republicans were like, you know what? We'll just vote against it. And a lot of people are criticizing Republicans for voting against it because the polls indicate that a majority of the American people want this package. So that's the next step. Whether or not it will be passed in the House, it definitely will be, and it will be signed on Joe Biden. It will be on Joe Biden's desk sooner rather than later. and people should expect to get their stimulus checks probably about a week or so after Biden actually signs the bill. So that's basically where we're at right now. It's going to be interesting moving forward here, guys, because the economy is opening back up. Things are moving again. We have states opening back up. There's some strong projections for the economy and growth coming up. And the market is a little afraid. They're afraid because they think that all this money being pumped into the economy, and with the economy opening back up and people starting to spend money, they think that inflation's on the horizon. And that's why the market has been very negative, very red this past week, right? Basically the past 2 weeks, really. It's been very red because of inflation. Now, Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, has basically said that, hey, the Fed expects some inflation, like some short-term spikes, but nothing long-term, right? The goal is to have under 2% inflation, right? And they think that that's going to continue to be the norm. However, in the short term, we could see some inflation. Now, the market is not believing Jerome Powell. They're not believing Jerome Powell on this. They think there's going to be inflation because we're about to print basically $1.9 trillion and put it into the economy, right? So the people in the finance industry and the markets are talking about inflation, right? And this is something that's not really been talked about with our politicians and our politics. So, it'll be interesting to see exactly what's going to happen here once this stimulus package is passed, because there are indications that the Democrats may want to do another stimulus check. Now, I thought for sure after this was done that there would be no more stimulus, but the Democrats are saying otherwise. They're saying that they may look to do another stimulus check. Who knows? But I am weary about all this money being pumped in the economy. I think that the market is on to something when it comes to inflation. Now, I hope that inflation is tame and and that we can keep it at bay. But, the more money that we print, with Biden, basically having plans to do more infrastructure spending, right? So he's probably going to try to push another $1+ trillion plan down the government's throat. I am very nervous about all the spending that the Democrats are doing. So I think the Republicans and the Blue Dog Democrats, have a pretty solid argument in regards to the stimulus being more targeted. Because, again, at this point, we got a lot of money that's circulating in this economy that, has either not been spent, it's been put into the markets, or is about to be spent, right? Because the economy is open back up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.